Welcome to our chemistry lesson. This is Senior 3 and my name is Mugumya Osward, who is going to take you through this lesson. So our lesson today is about fertilizers, and this is the first lesson on it. I want to explore and look at and discuss what fertilizers are. I hope this is not a new word. Maybe you've heard it before, or even you know how to use fertilizers, especially those students who offer agriculture at any level. They could be familiar with this word fertilizer. So even those ones who don't take agriculture, we have a chance of knowing what fertilizers are. Fertilizers, they lie under the chapter of applied chemistry. So the main topic is applied chemistry. Then under that, we shall look at fertilizers. So before we go into the details, we need to look at our lesson objectives for today. First of all, by the end of this lesson, all of us should be able to define or know what fertilizers are. Then we should also be able to state different types of fertilizers and give the examples, and also be able to state the advantages and disadvantages of fertilizers, as well as be able to tell the effect of excessive usage of fertilizers on the soil. So we have basically 4 objectives of which we can all achieve. So we define fertilizers. We have different ways of how we can define fertilizers. The first one is a fertilizer is a substance containing essential elements for the healthy growth of plants. Normally these ones we call them these kind of fertilizers, we normally call them NPKs, and these are the ones which are common. When we talk of NPKs fertilizers, and I say these are the ones which are common, they contain essential elements, which are always 3. That is nitrogen. So this is the symbol for nitrogen. Then this is the symbol for phosphorus, and this is also the chemical symbol for potassium. In other words, the NPKs, they contain nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in a certain proportions. So that is one way of how we can define fertilizers. Then secondly, we can define fertilizers as natural or artificial substance added to the soil to make the soil fertile, or replace the chemical elements taken from the soil by previous plants. I know some crops that we plant in our gardens, some of them, they might exhaust the soil. They might take a certain nutrient. For example, you might maybe plant beans and they take maybe phosphorus. I'm just assuming. So if they take the whole of phosphorus from the soil, then you need to apply a fertilizer which contains phosphorus, so that exhausted phosphorus can be replaced in the soil. That is, if the next crop you want to plant needs phosphorus. And we are saying that the fertilizer can be natural, or it can be artificial. It can be natural or artificial substance added to the soil. So we shall look at different types of fertilizers. Of course, we shall look at the ones which are natural and the ones which are artificial as we move on. But the major application or the major purpose of using a fertilizer, we can say that when added the soil, that is the fertilizer, and normally the fertilizers improve the soil fertility. So basically the use of fertilizers are to improve the soil fertility depending on which crops you are planting. So that is how we can define fertilizers. If you have any way of a different definition or how you understand fertilizers, you can use our charts, then you let us know, then we shall be able to learn from you. And make sure that all of you are watching, make sure you subscribe to the channel and you share it, and we watch this video till the end so that we don't miss anything. Let's continue. Let's look at some of the components of a fertilizer. Most of them, as I said, most important elements are nitrogen, which is symbolized by N, that is the chemical symbol, as I said before, potassium, which is K, and phosphorus, which is P. And at times, or sometimes, these fertilizers contain sulfur, but the major elements are nitrogen, phosphorus, then and potassium. This comes with NPKs, like I said before, the fertilizer that we call NPKs, the one that contain nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. These elements are absorbed by plants as compounds, especially nitrates and phosphates. So when we look at examples of fertilizers, we shall find that most of these fertilizers are compounds. For example, if we have ammonium fertilizers, I can have, let's say, ammonium nitrate, ammonium nitrate. So you can see that this ammonium nitrate or this fertilizer contains nitrogen here and here, meaning that it is provides nitrogen in the soil. So we are using a compound to provide the certain element, which is nitrogen. Or we can also use maybe potassium phosphate, which also provides, it can provide potassium, it can also provide phosphate. Of course, how do you know that maybe we have much of the phosphate or much of the phosphorus or potassium in a given fertilizer? Here you carry out percentage composition. You calculate for the formula mass, then after you also look for the mass of potassium in the compound. Then later on you carry out the calculation. I hope everyone did percentage composition. That was under more concept. Then later on you convert to percentage, then you see how much does the potassium contained in that fertilizer. We move on. So NPK fertilizers, like we have it here, we can find them as these are complex fertilizers that contain a mixture of three nutrients, that is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in varying proportions. So when we talk of varying proportions, it means that their net maybe they're not of the same percentage or the same proportion. We can have like potassium maybe having 40%, we can have like maybe phosphorus having 20%, and then the remaining balance maybe it is nitrogen. That is what we mean by varying proportions. Let's move on. Let's look at types of fertilizers. We say that there are mainly two types of fertilizers, and that is artificial, or what we can call inorganic fertilizers. At times we can call them synthetic, which are these ones are mainly made by man in the industries. We also have organic fertilizers, and most of the organic fertilizers at times we can refer them as manure. Not all of them are manure, but most of them are manure, as we shall discuss. We move on. Let's look at artificial fertilizers first. We first look at this type, we explain it, we explore it, and we find more about these artificial fertilizers. Please don't forget to subscribe and share the video so that you don't lose out in the next lesson when it is uploaded. We always do this every week. Make sure you keep updated. You can share with your friends so that everyone is not left out. These are synthetic fertilizers, like I said, that contain high percentage of essential elements. So when we talk of synthetic, this is saying that these are man-made. These fertilizers are made from the industries. They are just manufactured from industries, and those specific or those essential elements are put in such fertilizers. And once again, we said the essential elements are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But we have other elements that come in, but for them they are not all that essential, but the main ones are those three. Examples. Example 1, we have ammonium phosphate, ammonium sulfate. So normally, when they give you this, they can also ask you the chemical formula. The chemical formula of ammonium phosphate. For example, if it is maybe in paper 1, they can ask you which of the following is an artificial fertilizer. Then they put for you a chemical formula instead of the name. A chemical formula. So we should also get to know the chemical formulas. So that is for ammonium phosphate. I also have ammonium. We also have ammonium phosphate. So the first one is ammonium sulfate, not phosphate. Then this one is ammonium phosphate. I hope you still remember. how to write these chemical formulas. In case you don't know, then you have to put a comment in the chat, so that I can be able to know maybe how many people have forgotten how to write chemical formulas, and we see how we can help each other. So this is the chemical formula of ammonium phosphate. Then we also have sodium nitrate. Each of these fertilizers, they provide a certain element, or they have different ways of how they affect the soil. So this one has no bracket. So this is sodium nitrate. It is one of the fertilizers that make the soil alkaline. So this is ammonium. This is sodium nitrate. We also have liquid ammonia. Liquid ammonia is known for absorbing water, absorbing too much water. That is one of its disadvantages. I'm just giving you a hint on where we are going. Then we also have potassium chloride. There are very many, but I'll just give you a few so you can find out for more. Potassium chloride. Okay, so these are chemical formulas. So when you're reading or revising, make sure you also get to know them. As I said, they can come in paper 1, asking you which of the following is an artificial fertilizer, or synthetic fertilizer, or inorganic fertilizer. And then instead of writing you the names, they give you the chemical formulas. So don't miss out on that mark. Then we can also say that ammonium sulfate, which happens to be our first fertilizer, it is the most commonly used fertilizer, and it can be applied before sowing as the top dressing to the growing crop. So here we are giving the advantage of using, or how we can apply ammonium sulfate as a fertilizer. And again, we are saying that it is the commonly used fertilizer. So if you happen to find a question which is asking for the common fertilizer, that would be ammonium sulfate. And here we put its chemical formula. Let's move on. Note, liquid ammonia is very soluble, like I said before. It can easily be washed away by rain and can easily evaporate off the soil. Why do we say it can easily be washed away by rain? It is because ammonia is highly soluble in water. So in case after applying that fertilizer and it rains, then the rainwater will dissolve all the ammonia and go away with it when the water is maybe flowing or overflooding. Then that fertilizer, which is liquid ammonia, will move away with the rainwater. Secondly, a composite or balanced fertilizer contains nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium in certain correct proportions, and it is normally labeled as NPK. So in case you check on the package of any fertilizer and you find that there is NPK, just know that one is composed of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Then excessive use of ammonium fertilizers renders the soil acidic. So this is one of the disadvantages of using ammonium fertilizers. There are fertilizers that contain ammonia. All of them, most of them will start with ammonium something, ammonium sulfate, ammonium phosphate, and all that. As long as it starts with ammonia, so we say that is an ammonium fertilizer. So it renders the soil acidic, so the soil becomes acidic. So what do we do if we find that the soil is acidic, and maybe we don't want acidic soil? What we shall do, we shall apply what we call quick lime. Quick lime is the same as calcium oxide. In other words, we shall add calcium oxide to neutralize the acidity of the soil. So that's what we do. We add quick lime or calcium oxide so that our soil is no longer acidic. And also calcium oxide also helps the soil to become more porous. And when it becomes more porous, it means that it can absorb more water. We look at advantages of fertilizers. One, remember we are looking at artificial fertilizers. One, they do not harbor pests and diseases. In other words, they don't shelter pests. When we talk of pests, these are living organisms that can destroy crops when they're in the garden. Then we have diseases. We have different types of diseases. We have very many diseases that can affect our crops. Then secondly, they are available for use whenever needed. So for artificial fertilizers, there is no need of waiting. As long as maybe someone tells you that your soil or your plant or your crops, they need maybe potassium, you just go to the shop where they sell the fertilizers, then you buy that fertilizer and it will be available, which doesn't happen with organic fertilizers, as we shall see, because for organic fertilizers, you have to wait. You have to prepare them, you have to take time. So for them, they are not readily available. But for artificial, you can get them whenever needed or whenever they are required. Thirdly, they are effective when used in small amounts. So for them, for artificial fertilizers, we apply them in small amounts. At times when you buy these fertilizers, you are given instructions to follow, and you make sure that you stick to those instructions. And the good thing is that they are effective when used in small amounts. Then another advantage is that different fertilizers for different crops and soil types are usually available. So you find that a certain crop, maybe we can say maybe coffee needs a different fertilizer, but maybe if you have planted, let's say beans, they also need a certain fertilizer. So for them, they are produced in different types depending on the needs of the farmers. Then we can also say that if you are talking about some fertilizers, for example, sodium nitrate is mainly applied as nitrogen source to young plants and garden vegetables for a quick growth. In other words, sodium nitrate quickens the growth of plants, especially the vegetables. So if you are looking for a fertilizer to make your crops grow faster, then you apply sodium nitrate. But you can see that it is applied at a certain stage, and we are saying when the plants are still young. In other words, if you find that your crops are already old, then it might not be applicable. So it is only applied to young plants. Then we also have urea. It is a major organic nitrogen containing fertilizer. So you can see that urea maybe contains much of it is nitrogen. The bigger percentage of it is nitrogen. It is also suitable for foliar application and causes less acidic effect than ammonium phosphate. Okay. Then lastly, advantages and advantages of artificial fertilizers. They normally give good yield. In other words, if you apply them, the harvest will always be good if you followed what the instructions were directing you to do. Then finally, as we wind up, we look at disadvantages of these fertilizers. So they're expensive in terms of costs. They're expensive in terms of costs. In other words, to apply or to use these fertilizers, there is some money that you need to spend depending on which type of fertilizer you are buying. So you must be having the money at hand. Though we say that they are readily available or they are ever available if needed, but even the money, you must be having some money to spend. Then secondly, they not give desired results if the instructions for application are not strictly followed. Like we said, that they yield or they give you a good yield when applied in small amounts. In other words, if you apply too much of them, then you might not get what you desired or what you expected. So instructions must be followed. If they say use, let's say 20 mils, use 20 mils. If they say dissolve 20 grams in a 20-liter jelly can, please make sure you do that. Don't divert from the instructions. Then they may exhaust soil fertility if you use it for a long time. So what we mean here is that the soil, of course, has always got its natural soil fertility, but like I said, the major purpose of a fertilizer is to improve on the soil fertility. So instead, these ones, once you use them excessively, like season after season, they might exhaust the soil fertility, and at times we say they can even change the chemistry of the soil. What do we mean when we say talk of the chemistry? Like we said that if you use excess ammonium fertilizer, the soil will become acidic. In other words, the chemistry of the soil has been altered with. And here we're also saying that excessive use of sodium nitrates in the same soil increases alkalinity of the soil. In other words, if you use excess of sodium nitrate fertilizer, the soil will become alkaline. And again, we are saying that these become a source of groundwater pollution as they easily leach out of the soil as water drains away. So the chemistry of the soil has been changed completely. So we need to use our fertilizer maybe for one season, then wait for other 2 seasons so that the soil can regain its soil fertility. And also they can kill the living organisms which are always in the soil, which are also good for the plants. Then the crop yield is of inferior quality to one produced using organic fertilizers. So remember here we are using artificial things, we are using artificial substance. So we might produce the products which tend to be more artificial than natural. I'll give an example. If you compare passion fruits, we have those ones which we call them exotic, which are big in size and they have a lot of juice inside. They are big but with a lot of juice. And normally to have those ones, we need to apply artificial fertilizers. Mostly they work on artificial fertilizers. Then also have those small passion fruits which naturally grow maybe in the forest or in the bushes. You find that they are small, but their juice, the quality of the juice in those small passion fruits is far different from that of those big passion fruits. So the quality is inferior for the big ones compared to other small ones. And even other crops. We can talk of cassava, we can talk of oranges and all that. So the quality is always inferior compared to the ones where we apply organic fertilizers. So if you have any questions, once again, you can check below the chat. Then you have your question, you can comment, then I'll be able to get to you and answer your question. Okay, so having looked at artificial fertilizers, today we shall look at only that type. Then in the next lesson, we shall look at the second type, that we call organic fertilizers. So we have some exercise or what we can call review questions that we can try out. Remember, we have our Google Classroom, and if you are to join our Google Classroom, this is here we have our class codes. Our class code is here. So if you already have the Google Classroom app, you just need to type in the class code, then you're able to join our class. And in case maybe you don't know how to use the Google Classroom code, then down below in the description I'll put a link that you can tap on or click on, then to take you directly to our Google Classroom, whereby the notes after this lesson they will be uploaded, and you also try out this exercise and you hand in or submit, and I'll give you the feedback. I'll give you a feedback via your email or WhatsApp group. So as we wind up, I want to thank you all. Make sure you subscribe and you check out the playlist below for recent lessons you might have missed. So there are some lessons we had before this topic, so please check them out. And once again, subscribe so that you don't miss the future videos or lessons. God bless you.